What's going on, guys? Welcome to the next Josh Nooter Plays video. Today I'm going to be doing an official ranking of the Walking Dead seasons from worst to best. Now I did this a while back, but I've since gone and rewatched the entire series, and my opinion has definitely changed a little bit, so I thought I'd re-rank everything, and now I can have the complete Season 9 in there as well, since I was only going off the first half the last time I made this video. I'm not going to be including Season 10 because it's not finished. I'd rather just wait and see what my thoughts are on it when it's completely finished. Some other things that I want to say is that definitely this is my opinion, so please don't bash me in the comments if this is not what your list would be, but please do provide your list because I would like to see it, and it'd be nice to get some good friendly discussions going. With that out of the way, I think it's best to just jump right into it. So in last place, I put Season 7. Now, I used to think 8 was worse, but to be honest, I've gone back and rewatched, and man, even when you binge watch, this season is just so boring. It's such a slow season, lots of bottle episodes, and there's so many different characters and communities that, it's constantly having to switch back between them. Not to mention the fact that this season starts off with two huge character deaths that, while I thought the premiere was actually pretty good, for a lot of people it was just too much to handle, losing Abraham and Glenn in one episode. Season 7 is just also, as a whole, just unpleasant to watch. Our characters being forced to work for the Saviors, tortured, tormented psychologically, and it's just kind of dreary and gloomy. Now, I do think the overall story works pretty well, because when you think about it, they start out, they're all beaten down, they're thinking, well, this is our life from now on, and then by the end, they've finally been able to rise up and make a stand against the Saviors, and I do like the overall story. It just takes 16 episodes to get there, and it's a bit too much. And people are probably going to want to know my opinion. Yes, I really do think that Negan was entertaining for the first couple of episodes, but they really just hammered it in so much in those first 4 episodes that you got tired of him real quick because of just how badly he was tormenting our heroes, our survivors that we want to see succeed. To finish off, I'm going to go ahead and leave my favorite episode of the season and my least favorite. My favorite is definitely the premiere. I think it's the best episode of the season by far. And the worst, I'm probably going to have to go with episode 12, Say Yes. It just was boring. In 8th place is Season 8. Now first let's talk about what I do like about this season. I think what it does better than 7 is there's more action, for sure. It ends the war, which of course is a pro in my books because this was easily the most dragged out and boring storyline of the entire TV series. But when you think about it, this season really had the most potential out of all of them, so it's kind of sad to see it this low on the list. Just to list off some of the reasons why I think this is a bad season. They made Daryl a completely unlikable character and really everybody just makes constantly stupid decisions that put the group in danger. I know people do things under stress, but it's just way worse than normal in this season for some reason. Then of course you've got Carl's death, which was a huge separation from kind of the way the comics go, and I didn't like it at all. The actor didn't want out, so I have no idea why they decided to make such a weird decision at this point in the story, and just the way it happened too. And this season also kind of suffers from the same problems as Season 7 in that it's really slow paced. I mean, I did say there's more action, and that's true, but a lot of it is just like C-level characters just firing assault rifles at extras. Like there's a huge body count, but really not a lot of big characters die. There's not a lot of stakes. And a lot of the other groups that you see in this season, like the Scavengers and even the villains at the Sanctuary, just none of them are really interesting to me. It got old. Negan got old. He became much more unlikable than he was already in Season 7. And overall, this season is just a lot of missed opportunity and mild successes. My favorite episode is definitely Season 8, Episode 4, Some Guy. Very good standout episode with Ezekiel. My least favorite is probably Episode 6, The King, The Widow, and Rick. In fact, I think this is the worst episode of the entire series, so that'll probably give you a little, if you don't watch the show, that's a little bit of why I hate Season 8. In 7th place is Season 2. Now, before I go any farther, I do want to say that from here on out, I think all of these seasons are really good. It's just a matter of which one I like more than the last. And for me, Season 2 is probably the least good of all of the great seasons of the show. Let's just get into some of the pros right now. So you've got lots of intimate character growth in this season because it is so slow-paced, but it works a lot better than it did in Seasons 7 and 8 because you've got the introduction of great new characters like Herschel and Maggie and people that stick around for a long time and leave a big impact. Now, I do think the first half of this season is a bit too slow and boring at times, but the second half really picks it up, and those final few episodes, especially Better Angels with Shane and Rick, the final confrontation between those two, is flawless. If I'm being honest, it's really just those first few episodes that make the season a bit boring. They spend so much time searching for Sophia, and although it definitely pays off in the end with her walking out of the barn, and probably the most jaw-dropping moment in the series at that point, it just wasn't worth the wait for me. It took like 5 episodes of looking around in the woods, and not a whole lot happened. But like I said, we did get a lot of great intimate character moments that probably made the show kind of what it becomes in the future. My favorite episode in Season 2 is by far Better Angels. The final confrontation between Rick and Shane, as I said, is one of my favorite moments in the entire series. And my least favorite episode of the season is probably Chupacabra. We get some great stuff with Daryl in this bottle episode, but other than that, there was no plot to this episode whatsoever, and it kind of went bonkers at the end when he shows up with the necklace of ears and Andrea shoots him. It was just kind of a mess in the end. In number 6, I have Season 3. Now, if I'm being honest, this season probably has the best first half out of any of them. It was just episode after episode of non-stop action and just absolute insanity. We get so many character deaths. Herschel loses his leg. It was just an insane way to start off a season. And of course, this one also has other pros such as the governor and Woodbury being introduced, and confrontations between them and the mid-season finale. And of course we get the return of Merle, who is one of my favorite characters at the time. But unfortunately, despite how much I love this season, it still has a lot of big problems. The main one being Andrea. They totally butchered her character this season. She turns into an absolute moron, sleeping with the governor, refusing to kill him. Wanting peace is a good thing, but she puts other lives before her friends, and that just really pissed me off. And in the end, I didn't give a shit when she died. I also thought that the second half overall was a lot more boring and kind of dragged out. And it was all kind of building towards, a big confrontation between Rick and the governor. And even the finale, that didn't even happen. They made us wait until Season 4, which kind of upset me a bit. And I also want to mention that I think they misused the inmate characters that they find this season. Axel and Oscar become kind of, part of Rick's group. And then they're just killed off as cannon fodder when he encounters Woodbury and the governor for the first time. I thought that was a really dumb way to get rid of characters that I would have liked to see stick around. My favorite episode of the season has got to be Episode 1, Seed. Fantastic premiere, and my least favorite is definitely the finale. Welcome to the Tombs, I believe it was called. In 5th place, I have Season 4. Now, out of all of them, I think this one has the best overall story, where you kind of have Rick starting out as the farmer, trying to teach his son the way of the art of peace, after what he did in the season finale of Season 3. And by the end of the season, he's back to murdering people, ripping people's throats out, and he doesn't care what his son sees, as long as they all get to live. I also think that the flu storyline is the best original storyline that the show has done, meaning it's something that was not from the comics, not adapted from the comics. And in the second half, I also really like the bottle episodes. It's the one time I think they did that really well because it felt like it was building towards something. It was building towards all the groups reaching terminus, and I liked that. And as much as I'm frustrated that they made us wait like 6 episodes to see the governor again, I actually really kind of liked those 2 bottle episodes with him in it. It really kind of added a little depth to his character, which was a little bit necessary because in Season 3, I do have to admit, he was a bit stoic. Didn't really have a whole lot of backstory besides he has a dead daughter that he keeps in his basement, which wasn't all that interesting. But of course it all paid off in the end when we get one of the most epic battles in the show's history, with Herschel getting decapitated and the loss of the prison. And that's kind of what sets the stage for the rest of the show when you really think about it, because for a whole season and a half they were cooped up in the prison and now they're out on the road again. And everything from there on was pretty good in this season, if I'm being honest. And now I've got an unpopular opinion. I think my favorite episode of the season is actually the finale, A. I just really liked how low-key this episode was. It didn't have any major deaths or giant battles or anything, but it was just such a great episode in terms of storytelling and drama. My least favorite is probably episode 12 still, because it was just Daryl and Beth looking for a drink. It has some emotional moments, but overall that wasn't worth fitting all that into an entire episode, if you ask me. In 4th place, I have Season 6. Now, a lot of people would put this as their favorite season, and a lot would put it as their last. It's definitely a controversial one. And although this one definitely has some of the show's lowest lows, the highs are just so fucking perfect that I can't put this season any further back. I mean, honestly, I know that there's like 2 or 3 really shitty episodes in this season, but when the other 13 or 14 are amazing, I think that's a pretty good trade-off. This season also has tons of action and probably the highest number of huge comic book moments, so I think a lot of comic book readers really appreciated this season for what it brought to the show. That being said, I am going to put this season in kind of the middle because I do know that there are some bad episodes like Now, and I'm not going to name them off, but let's also talk about how this season really misuses cliffhangers, whether you're talking about the Glenn dumpster thing or the mid-season finale and how lackluster that was, or Negan killing somebody in first-person point of view. I also want to talk about the one where Dwight shoots Daryl in the back in the closing shot of episode 15. That was really lame. And then, of course, he was fine, too. It's like they just shrug it off. I think little things like that are what started to turn off longtime fans of the show, and it kind of led to the decline in the viewership, but I still think this is a really amazing season if you're able to overlook those, and if you're binge watching the show, you probably wouldn't notice these issues as much as if you watched it back when this season came out. And as you guys probably know from the last time I did my ranking, this season contains my favorite episode of the entire series, Episode 9, No Way Out. My least favorite is probably Episode 5, Now. It's probably the most fillery episode in the entire series. Just not really much happens, it's just a lot of people talking. In third place is Season 9. Angela Kang completely reinvigorated the series after Scott Gimple stepped down as showrunner, and she gave us some of the best episodes we have ever gotten out of the show, and I was so happy to see the changes. Let's give this season some pros. The suspense and the drama are both way better than Season 7 or 8, and even some of the other seasons I've been mentioning. The Whisperers make an excellent villain in the second half of the season, and there's some really shocking moments with them, with suspense and the fog with Jesus' death, and all of that stuff, and there really doesn't feel like a whole lot of filler episodes in this season. And all of these pros, you have to take in mind that this series is losing two of its biggest characters, Rick and Maggie, and I'm going to be honest, I don't miss them as much as I thought I would. I also think it was the right move to make a massive time jump right after Rick leaves. It really kind of opened up the door for a ton of new opportunities, and while this season does make a few small missteps, I think overall it was still vastly more enjoyable than the seasons that preceded it. As far as the minor complaints I do have, I do think the second half had a few episodes that didn't quite do it for me. Mainly episodes 10, the Whisperer backstory wasn't as good as it could have been. Episode 12 is the first time we actually get to see inside of their camp, and not a whole lot happens. It kind of follows Henry, who becomes Carl 2.0. Wasn't a huge fan of him, but it was very sad to see him die in episode 15 because of his relationship with Carol and Ezekiel. Speaking of episode 15, The Calm Before is my favorite episode in this season. My least favorite is probably episode 10, Omega. Just wasn't a huge fan of Alpha's backstory, and while she was very terrifying initially, I think the more they show her, the less scary and the less compelling she becomes. Also, shout out to episode 5, What Comes After, as a final tribute to Rick Grimes as he leaves the show. I thought it was near flawless, although I still have mixed feelings about the fact that he's going to be in his own set of movies now. Everybody thinks he's dead, even though he isn't. But overall, I liked it. I thought it was a great send-off for him. In second place, I have Season 1. This is a season that is very underrated. I see a lot of people put this one way lower than I have it, and while I do understand that it's definitely the shortest and it has the least amount of content, people underestimate, just how much this did for the series. It introduced the great characters, it introduced the zombie apocalypse, the action, the gore, the story. Everything that stems from this wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this season. It sets the stage and it creates the foundation that the show would soon build upon. Now that being said, I do have a few small issues. The Vatos gang kind of didn't need to be there if you ask me. They were kind of just there to drag out the storyline in which the survivors go back to Atlanta to save Merle, which I don't know why Rick would agree to do that anyway. Even though he handcuffed him there, he knows he's a piece of shit. Also, Rick's accent, I think, is a little over the top this season. They seem to tone it down after that, which I appreciated. And I have one more complaint. Lori. Fucking Lori. Not 1 month after the zombie apocalypse starts and she's already hooking up with Rick's best friend. Still pisses me off. I know people can be assholes, but it just annoys me so much that I think it's a fault to her character and a fault to the story that they make it this soon after, Rick is supposedly dies. Favorite episode of this season, pilot episode, no question about that. Least favorite is probably episode 4, Vatos, as I've said before. But in the end, guys, my number one spot has not changed. I still have Season 5 as my favorite season of The Walking Dead. It has almost no bad episodes, in my opinion. It has a great range of tones, whether you're talking about Terminus, people getting their throats slit, to then going to Alexandria, which is kind of a society that mirrors what we once had before. There's so many shocking twists this season. As I said, the action, the gore, the drama, it's all turned up to 100, and it's very consistent. Even when there's a meh storyline like the hospital one, at least they brush through it really quickly. A lot of the storylines last no more than about 4 or 5 episodes this season, and the fast pace really helps them overcome some of the problems that plague the other seasons. And overall, guys, I just really struggled to think of an episode in this season that I think is bad. From start to finish, it had me captivated. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I even think the hospital storyline is not that bad. It was something different. I'm glad they tried something different. It's not the best original storyline. As I've said, I think the best original storyline that the TV series has done is the flu one, but this is a close second if I'm being honest. So in the end, Season 5 is my favorite. It has a lot of range, a little bit of everything, should be able to satisfy almost all fans. And with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and put in my favorite. It's probably Episode 1, No Sanctuary. And my least favorite is probably Episode 10, Them, even though it has the highlight moment of Rick saying, "We are the Walking Dead." The rest of it's pretty boring, kind of a whole lot of people walking, and it accomplished the least amount of story out of all the episodes in this season. And there you have it, guys. That was my ranking. Be sure to leave yours in the comments, as I said before, and as always, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.